this feels nice. There's about a week there where just from kind of traveling back and forth on the weekends, I was off of my normal delayed schedule. You know, some of the guys who are making these like regular sort of fitness videos, they've got like an archive. Like they've got like 10 or 20. Like this is more like the vlog style dudes. And they just have videos ready to go so they can like, you know, just have them in a queue to post for later. And then my version of that is I'll hit a lift, like I'll hit a lift today, and then the next day I'll splice it up together, you know, make sure all the lighting looks right, upload, right, and just kind of repeat. That is one aspect of what you could call the Sam Sulek method of you know, posting videos, where I definitely got strongly influenced by a certain Piana from the bigger by the day kind of videos. But yeah, but what I'm trying to get at is that's a nice schedule, right? I don't feel like I'm having to rush, and I don't have to post these at like midnight like I was for a couple days. But plan for today's lift with back, I'm gonna go a little more chill weight wise, and maybe try to branch out and do a couple at least different movements, as well as different potentially combinations. You know, for a long time I was on a drop set kick. Every set I would do of every working whatever was a drop set. Pull downs, drop set. Rows, drop set. Bench, drop set. Right? Everything. But you know, I don't think that's totally necessary for all the sets that you're doing. But for a few, I think it's good. And you know, I kind of follow a certain logic of thinking where it's like, all right, there's basically, you know, two extremes in this scenario. Guys who do the same workout every time, the same chest day they've been doing since the 90s, the same back day, the same leg day, the same whatever. And if that works for them, cool, you know. But I think on the other side of that spectrum is someone who takes it too far and is constantly changing up their workouts. Like this is the guy who says he's doing full body every day, and then the next week he says he's doing bro split, and then the next week he says he's doing Mets or one lift a week. And there's just no consistency whatsoever, you know, because I think there's a sweet spot, and that's if you watch a lot of these, I'm sure you may have noticed, or maybe not, that when that's a good argumentative point I like to make, just as like a visual of, okay, some people think like this, I think this is too crazy. Some people think like this, the total opposite, I also think they're a little bit too crazy. And then somewhere in that middle ground is where you're going to find the sweet spot, you know. So between extreme repetitiveness and, you know, complete disorderly, you know, conduct of your workouts is a mix in between, where there is enough consistency, at least for, you know, periods of time where you do the same training style, you know, push-pull legs, chest, back, arms, legs, check, you know, whatever combination you're doing, and change up the lift on a lift by lift basis. Make sure you don't do the same thing over and over again, so that you always get a different kind of, well, just a different kind of stimulus, you know. I'm going to leave the gym feeling very different, still good, from a light squeezing day versus a heavy nasty day. And they each have their own kind of pros and cons. So since I've been kind of on like a really heavy pulling rowing kick over the last couple back days, that's making me think that today I should focus a bit more on lighter weight squeezing, slower, extra controlled reps. I don't think my reps are that uncontrolled for the most part, but that it's very different than doing like a full, you know, 10-second, not a 10-second eccentric, but you know what I'm saying, like really slow controlled squeezing reps, you know. And they have their place, right? Like it's like a normal distribution. Straight sets are in the middle, super crazy heavy sets are on the end, and light squeezing sets are also on the other end. So as long as I make sure I kind of dabble around, I think I'm good, you know. So that definitely plays in to my, at least in the skin of the last few years, recent kind of sort of leaf turning to value my safety in terms of just overall like joint, tendon. Really, I'm just trying to say I don't want to rip my lats off, you know. So it's definitely going to lend to that sort of goal, to include some lighter squeezing days, just so you're not constantly, you know, pushing your freaking everything to the absolute limit that it can handle, and then eventually overloading it. right? You take your muscles themselves are a bit more pliable and kind of resilient to injury and tweaks. Where, I mean, there's like powerlifter guys where they'll have a pretty decent muscular tear. So this is like an extreme injury in this scheme of things. And, you know, they take off, they let it all kind of bind itself up back together, you know, because, I mean, when your muscles flex, it's this extra stiff, like, just sort of material, at least feeling it from the outside. But when it's relaxed, I mean, you just have like this freaking, you know, fibrous kind of goo, you know, with full of like fascia and whatever. So if you leave it and you actually let it heal, it'll all kind of group back up together pretty strong, you know, if you really let it heal all the way. Your tendons, not so much, you know. This is like, you know, my bro science-y take to describe tendons, but I think you'd agree, you're not just gonna suddenly completely attach half your MCL if half of it tore when you got like side-swiped playing football, or like your rotator cuff or your whatever. You know, if you rip your pec off, tendon of the bone, it's not just gonna click back together. You know, so that's something where I've started to get a bit more respect for just the damage that you can do. You know, so if I ever have a little tweak, or maybe my left lat feels a little tight, and, you know, maybe I shouldn't try to bent over row 4 plates, I'm going to listen to that inner voice. I'm going to listen to it, and I'm going to say thank you, you know, for not ripping my lat off and totally screwing the pooch, you know. But it's don't be so concerned about that. I'm just, that's just my little kick of, you know, trying to say I don't want to hurt myself. But either way, I can guarantee that within, and if I do it a little bit lighter today, that'll be a bit, you know, I might do a little bit more volume, because the sets on like an individual set basis won't be so crazy damaging in like a, you know, fatigue kind of way. So I might be able to do a little bit more. But by the time I'm like an hour in, you know, put all my stuff down, warmed up, get ready for set 1, you know, by just about an hour or so, I should have a pretty gnarly back pump. You know, I'm not talking wide enough that I won't be able to get through the door, but pretty wide for me. You know, so I think no more discussing it. I'm just gonna make it happen. All right. Forgot to turn the mic on. I did like a whole 2-minute thing. I'm like, don't go too heavy, don't go too light. Make sure your set's just right. And that's the plan for these next few. Heavy enough that I feel it, but not light enough that I'm just moving weight around. You know, I want it to be hard. And not just for, you know, difficulty's sake. I mean, so it actually does something. You're not gonna, I don't think any biceps were built curling the 5-pound dumbbells. At least not, you know, experienced biceps. Okay. You know what? Let's spam these. 2 more, and then I'll move on to something else. Okay. 1 more. Okay. Whew. Oh. 5 plates was too much. I had to drop it to 4, but this will be good. This is more trap focused, or mid-back rather. Oh, one more. Okay. Ooh, all right. Oh, okay. Let's get a pullover going next. Row. Oh, no. Pull down row, pull over. Nice little tripler, I think. Same style as all the other ones. A good squeeze at the bottom and a slow stretch. And I want this to be more of a lengthy, torturous set. It's not just going to hit like 8 reps and then I won't be able to move. Failure with lighter weight stretching kind of stuff. Well, stretching and squeezing. It's just a little more lengthy. Right? It's kind of, that'll be the kind of set that tests your ability to actually, like, you know, handle the burn. But I think I can handle it. So let's make this shit happen. Let's just do one of those today. Let's move on to a cable curl next. That was good, but something's not clicking. All right, this will be it. 5 rep alternating pullovers, single arm, burn, squeeze, and just get my lats as pumped up as possible. Okay. All right. Let's pose down. All right, let's try no fancy pants lighting. I've got a little bit of a habit of total lights off, just the one spotlight above me, and then just, upping the freak factor by a scale of, as much as freaking feasible. So instead of that, let's just see how we're looking in the plain Jane, regular ass warehouse lights. Which, in all honesty, is probably a better representation of looking at yourself, in slightly non-optimal lighting. Because, you ever hear of catfishing? Right? Anybody can make themselves look extra appealing if you control, literally every aspect of everything going on. So, looking at yourself in a little more of a plain setting, it's probably a real, or at least a better indicator of like your actual, kind of look and build. But, yeah. Yeesh. Just from how it looks through the through my little sort of side screen, this is quite the freaking back pump. Oh man. Yeah, let me try one more of those actually. Ah. Oh crap. Holding the back pose with a back pump. Yeah, that's a little bit of an extra degree of difficulty. And that's one thing I'm going to end up talking about, come this winter, is the fact that, as I get more and more cut up, I like how my back looks unpumped a bit more than I do, like, fully swollen and everything else. Because even though, we might think of being pumped up as just like this, all-encompassing leveling up of how you look in the moment, not totally true, right? It's a give and take. You're taking, right, more size, just more swollenness. Literally, somebody's arms can increase like a half inch, 3/4 inch just over the course of getting a really good arm pump. But in the sacrifice of, well, the drawback, the give, is you lose that kind of definition. It's like if you have if you've ever seen a balloon that's supposed to be a shape, like a square or like a triangle, whatever, like the rubber was formed like that. If you fill it up with enough air and just get it as swollen as possible, it's just going to end up round, And some guys like that more. They're going to say, oh, when I'm, full and round, and just that's what I'm looking for. But I don't know, man. I think the grain is a much cooler aspect. Like if I could look like this, or like how I look cut up indefinitely, I'm going to pick the cut up version because, well, then it has its own double give, because when you're cut up, even though you're smaller, you'll actually look bigger because you've got the proportionality factor playing, where your waist and your elbows and your shoulders and your, like, just all your joints, all the midsection areas that are supposed to be smaller, look smaller relatively to everything else, and then you look freaking bigger and crazier. So it's always a give and take. But that's my yin and yang. That's my ebb and flow of the last 3 or so years. Bulk up, cut down. And it's not just a back and forth staying in the same place. It's more like I'm walking forward, but I'm kind of slithering, right? I'm making progress, get really bulked up, cut down, get really bulked up, and the whole process is just slowly moving forward. But good back day, nothing else to say. Let's roll. There we go. All right, yeah. Some time has passed. The workout did not go to extra late in the night, but me and Mark went to go get some hot chicken takeover and then help one of our buddies move some stuff around at their house. So I have got a full belly. Potentially gonna, make my stomach a little upset going into tomorrow, but that's okay. That is okay with me, right? I don't need every meal to be chicken and rice and everything else, and also just because I like it. That's half of it. But also, I don't think it's like. I guess this is up to you, right? Your level of, kind of strictness with the things that you're doing. But as far as I'm concerned, in an off season, if you're trying to grow, you want to recover, you want to get calories into your system so that you're actually, full of enough energy to build everything back and build everything back up bigger and stronger. See, man, more food is not a problem. More food is very rarely the issue. You know what I'm saying? Plus, don't forget, 30 minutes of cardio is still the staple. As much as we're always, pinpoint the most efficient meal plan and everything else, there is most certainly some logic to, being able to burn stuff off, right? The guy who works at your office, who works out all the time and does CrossFit and long distance cycling, yeah, he can eat some treats. He's burning through that energy. It's a bit more of an issue if your energy expenditure or if somebody's daily activity level is on the pretty much low side, because then the only need that your body has to actually burn energy and use the food that you're eating for fuel is just to keep yourself alive, right? To pump your blood, to walk around a little bit. But if that's it, that doesn't take a ton of energy, right? Just staying alive is not plates upon plates of food. It really is. You guys can get away with sub 2,000 calories, depending on the guy's weight and whatever their activity level may be. But that's not unfathomable, because it's just a calculation of your size and how much calories, your heart rate, and everything else like that. But just to stay alive, not a ton of food. Now once you add weight training, once you add cardio, and really just, even just those two, that's substantial. That is a large amount of energy compared to what the regular working out kind of person is going to burn in a single day, to the point where, yeah, that guy's different, right? That guy's metabolism is, and it's not even so much of a metabolism thing per se. It's more so just that guy has more of a need to extract the energy from the food that he's eating, rather than purely just store it as body fat because it's in a surplus, right? It's not an awesome kind of representation of what I'm getting at, but you're getting paid X a month, your rent and your regular life is half of that, and everything extra, right, gets saved, gets stored. So food wise, right, you're paying your body 3,000 calories. You only need 2,000 to stay alive. That extra 1,000, it doesn't just disappear. Your body is really good when it comes to keeping a very smart and accurate count of everything that goes into it, as well as the energy that gets burned and is put out, because whatever difference there is will be made up for in your body's basically fat stores, for the most part, to put it simply, right? You eat in a deficit, you're actually dieting for real, you're going to start losing body fat, right? You got to itch into your savings of energy, right? And in the opposite case, at least, to a degree, if you eat enough in a surplus, you're going to start growing new muscle, but there's always going to be some fat storage along with it. There is no off season where the guy is exactly as lean as he was in the dieting phase, right? It's just not how the freaking math adds up, So if your point is to get bigger, eat some food, right? Don't worry about getting a little bit softer. It's just part of the game. Don't get too soft, because then you're setting yourself up for, if not failure, just a chore of a diet to get back to a regular body fat. But if you're within a 18% body fat kind of area in your deeper off season, that's not, 18% to diced, that's 3 months, right? That's 3 or 4 months of, you know, just a regular diet. I'm not even talking like complete starvation mode. You know, it's pretty quick to make a change if you're within that, you know, kind of body fat percentage area. You know, so I guess the point I'm getting at is if you're bulking, part of it too, even just on like a personal note, get your food in now, because if you actually want to stick to a real diet, you're not going to be able to, I mean, there's not going to be hot chicken takeover once I start dieting down. You know, there's not going to be a Cane's at the end of the week once I start dieting down. You know, as much as I let my diet get slightly dirtier in off season, is the same proportion that I clean it up in a dieting phase. And it's kind of just because of the purpose that the diet is supposed to serve. You know, I think one underrated aspect of an off season, in compared to, you know, going back and forth between bulk and cut, is the fact that you kind of, I mean, at least as, you know, long as I've been doing it, my pattern has been eat a friggin' ton of food within reason for, you know, 5-6 months, and then get to the point where I'm like, okay, I'm sick of eating all this food. And then to diet for 3 months and get pretty freaking lean at the end of it, I'm still within my buffer zone of, I'm so sick of eating all this food. So the dieting phase gets extra easy. And then at the end of the dieting phase, I start to get that itch to eat more food again. And whoop-de-doo, it's time to bulk. You know, so it's just a nice back and forth, right? It's like you're pushing somebody on the swing, and every time they come back to you, you push them a little harder, and it keeps getting higher and higher. You know, so that's kind of my outlook on my dieting phase. And for me, that feels pretty good, right? Like that's my natural orbit around bulked and lean. You know, I'm in a figure 8 of each. You know, now I'm in the bulked orbit, getting bigger. Oh, I'm getting a little tired of the food. I'm pretty much as big as I'm gonna get. Launch into the diet. Oh yeah, nice and lean. And then just back and forth, all in equilibrium, you know. And some guys, maybe more power lifter focused, you know, you want to just move insane weights purely for its own sake, they're going to keep their orbit around the bulk side. And then, you know, some other more just guys who don't have that same itch to get big, and they just like being their size really lean, they're going to stay right here in the dieted orbit. You know, that's all they like. They don't want to branch out. They just want to stay nice and lean. This is the look that they've culminated, and they've said to themselves, I want to stay here for a while, you know. And in both, you know, of those situations, you're good, right? That's sweet. As long as you actually mean it, and, you know, you're staying bulked or you're staying cut because you actually want to, you know, not just because of like some kind of outer pressure or whatever, then you're good, right? That's sweet. You know, the problem is there's a lot of characters who are, you know, kind of non-orbiting entities. They're not bulked, they're not cut, they're just floating through space. You know, it's not good. And they want to be one or the other, they're just not exactly sure which one. And that's where I say you got to pick. You know, the only wrong decision of should I bulk versus should I cut is the third hidden option, where you do nothing and then you just stay the same body fat percentage that you're at now. You're not getting that much bigger or stronger, and you're not getting any leaner either. You're just staying there, you know. And stasis, I mean, shit, staying exactly the same as where you were before, a year ago, 2 years ago, whatever. That's like the antithesis of life, you know. Something's doing good if it's kind of moving around and being active. You know, if things start to slow down, I don't know, man. Just pick one. And no matter which one you do, if you think you picked wrong, at least afterward is going to be the time to do the other one. So it's not even picking between the two. It's just picking which one you want to do first. You know, but that's how to exactly decide that. That's its own situation, right? Are you a beginner? Maybe just don't do either and main gain. I guess I forgot. That's the fourth option, which is solid. You're going to grow if you start working out and you've never worked out before. I did that for like 3 years before I really started getting into like leveraging my calorie intake and carbs. I was eating my, you know, enough protein the whole time, but that's, everybody eats the protein, I feel. Actually getting enough energy-based kind of foods, that can really push the scale one way or the other. But once that has kind of reached its end, you're not like gaining the same size and strength as you were in the beginning of your kind of newbie gains phase. That's where I say you want to pick. So if you're a beginner, don't even worry about it. Work out hard and eat when you're hungry. Stay hydrated. Perfect tip. And then the more you get into it, the more you're going to learn about, protein and carbs and everything else. So it's just a natural progression. But you'll get to a point where you got to pick one or the other, and I think you'll like it. But that's my opinion. That's not like a fact, So just take that as you will. But I'm gonna get home, eat second dinner, drink a freaking ton of water. I was sweating bad today. I guess sweating good today. And then get ready for some arms tomorrow. So I guess that's all I got. I'll see you then.